The spaceship was a tomb. Cold, dark, and empty for 50 years. Or so the scavengers thought. They came for human secrets. But they were about to find something much more dangerous. Touch that again, a voice growled from the shadows, and your teeth will find a new purpose. The scavengers laughed. They saw a tiny animal. They didn't see the perfect hunter. This was Jasper. He wasn't a pet. He was the brain, the eyes, and the claws of the entire ship. The hunt has begun. And in this house, the cat always wins. Watch the full story of the little guardian now. The deep silence of space was broken by the mechanical growl of a scavenger ship. It was a small, ugly vessel belonging to a group of aliens known as the Krell. The Krell were tall, lizard-like creatures with thick scales and yellow eyes. They were famous across the galaxy for stealing technology from abandoned ships. Today, they had found the biggest prize of all, a human research station called the Solstice. It had been floating in the dark for over 50 years. To the Krell, it looked like a treasure chest waiting to be opened. They believed all the humans were long gone, leaving their secrets behind. The air inside the station was cold and smelled like old metal. Vark, the leader of the Krell scavengers, stepped onto the station with a heavy thud of his boots. Behind him, two other scavengers, Zog and Rek, followed with large bags and plasma cutters. Their flashlights cut through the thick darkness, dancing over the empty hallways. Vark laughed, his voice sounding like dry paper rubbing together. He told his crew that humans were weak and foolish for leaving such a powerful ship behind. He felt like a king entering an empty castle. As they walked deeper into the station, the atmosphere changed. The silence was no longer peaceful, it felt heavy. Zog stopped suddenly, his lizard ears twitching. He whispered to Vark that he heard something. It sounded like a soft click-clack on the metal floor, like tiny nails hitting the ground. They all turned their lights toward the sound, but there was nothing there. Only empty shadows and cold walls. Vark told them they were being cowards. He said it was just the ship cooling down after many years. But even Vark felt a strange chill on his scales. Finally, they reached the command center. This was the heart of the ship. Huge computer screens lined the walls, and in the center stood a high captain's chair. Vark walked toward the main console. He could see a glowing gold data chip plugged into the system. This chip contained all the human secrets, weapon designs, and star maps. Vark's eyes widened with greed. He reached out his long, scaly hand to pull the chip from the slot. He thought he was seconds away from becoming the richest scavenger in the sector. Suddenly, every screen in the room turned bright red. The hum of the ship's engines changed from a low buzz to a deep, angry growl. Before Vark's fingers could touch the gold chip, a voice boomed through the room. It did not come from a person, it came from the speakers above them. The voice was calm, cold, and very dangerous. It said, "Touch that again, and your teeth will find a new purpose." The Krell scavengers froze. They had never heard a voice like that. It sounded like a threat from a ghost. Zog and Rek pulled out their plasma rifles, pointing them at the corners of the room. Vark shouted, demanding to know who was there. He screamed that they were the Krell and they feared no one. But the voice did not answer. Instead, the lights in the room began to flicker and die. In the strobe-like flashes of light, they saw a shadow moving. It was not a large shadow. It was small, fast, and stayed close to the ground. It moved with a grace that no human or Krell possessed. It was a predator, but a very small one. "That I can see your hearts beating," the voice said again through the speakers. "I can see the fear in your eyes. Humans left me here to keep this place clean. Usually, that means cleaning up dust. But today, it means cleaning up trash like you." Vark was shaking now. He commanded his men to fire their weapons into the dark. Bright blue bolts of energy hit the walls, but they hit nothing but air. The small shadow was gone before the light could find it. The Krell were no longer the hunters, they were the ones being hunted. Suddenly, the lights came back on at full strength. Sitting right in the middle of the captain's desk, right next to the gold chip, was a small animal. It was an orange tabby cat, a simple domestic house cat. It was cleaning its paw with its tongue, looking very bored. Around its neck was a silver collar with a glowing blue light. This was Jasper. He looked tiny compared to the giant Krell, but his eyes were sharp and intelligent. He stopped cleaning his paw and looked directly at Vark. Vark started to laugh, but the laugh was nervous. He asked if this little furball was the one making the big threats. He raised his hand to swat the cat away, thinking it was just a harmless pet. But Jasper didn't move. He didn't run away. He simply stood up and arched his back. The blue light on his collar turned a deep, angry purple. The gravity in the room suddenly doubled, slamming the Krell scavengers to their knees. They couldn't even lift their heads. Jasper walked slowly to the edge of the desk, looking down at the struggling aliens. His voice, coming through the ship's speakers, was now a low snarl. "I told you what would happen," the cat said. "My claws are small, but they are very sharp. And I have the entire ship as my weapon." The Krell looked up in terror. They realized that this small cat was not a pet. He was the master of the ship. The hook was set. The scavengers were trapped, and the real game was just beginning. The air in the command center grew thick and heavy. Vark, Zog, and Rek were pinned to the cold floor by the invisible force of the ship's gravity. Their lizard hearts beat fast against their ribs. They were massive creatures, built for war and raiding, yet they could not even lift a finger. Above them, sitting on the high-tech desk, Jasper the cat looked perfectly comfortable. To him, the gravity felt normal because the ship's computer was protecting his small body. He licked a stray hair on his shoulder, acting as if the three giant aliens on the floor were nothing more than dust. The silence was terrifying. The only sound was the low hum of the ship's power core and the rhythmic click of Jasper's silver collar. Vark tried to speak, but his jaw felt like it was made of lead. He managed to groan out a question, asking how a mere animal could control such a massive machine. Jasper stopped licking his fur and looked down. His yellow eyes didn't look like the eyes of a pet anymore, they looked like two burning suns. The blue light on his collar began to pulse in time with his breathing. Through the ship's speakers, Jasper's voice returned. It was deeper now, vibrating through the metal floor. He explained that his collar was not just a decoration. It was a neural bridge, a gift from the last human captain. It allowed Jasper's brain to talk directly to the ship's artificial intelligence. In this ship, Jasper was not just a cat. He was the brain, the eyes, and the hands of the Solstice. To show his power, Jasper flicked his tail to the left. Instantly, the gravity on Zog's side of the room vanished. Zog flew upward, hitting the ceiling with a loud thud before floating in the air like a balloon. Before Zog could scream, Jasper flicked his tail to the right, and the gravity returned with a snap. Zog fell back to the floor, gasping for air. It was a display of total control. Jasper was playing with them, just like a cat plays with a mouse before the end. He told them that humans were very clever. They knew that a soldier could be tired or scared, but a cat's instinct to protect its territory never dies. The humans had spent years teaching the ship's AI to recognize Jasper as the master key. Without Jasper's permission, not a single bolt on the ship would move. Jasper began to walk slowly across the desk, his white paws making no sound. He told the Krell that he remembered his big friend, Captain Miller. Miller had taught him that some creatures in the galaxy come to trade, while others come to steal. Jasper knew exactly what the Krell were. He had watched them through the ship's external cameras from the moment their ugly ship arrived. He had watched them laugh as they forced the airlock open. He had listened to their plans to sell human history for money. As he spoke, the walls of the command center began to change. Secret panels opened, revealing rows of small, automated security turrets. Every single gun was pointed directly at Vark's head. The suspense in the room was so high that even the air felt like it was about to explode. Vark, sweating and shaking, tried to bargain. He offered Jasper food, riches, and even a place on their planet as a god. But Jasper only let out a sound that was half purr and half growl. He didn't want their meat or their gold. He told them that humans had a special word for what he was doing: home defense. To a cat, a home is everything. It is where you sleep, where you feel safe, and where your memories live. The Krell had walked into a sacred place with dirty boots and greedy hearts. Jasper leaned forward, his face just inches away from Vark's terrified eyes. He whispered that he hadn't even begun to show them what the ship could really do. Suddenly, Jasper turned his head toward the door. His ears rotated, picking up a sound that the aliens couldn't hear. The purple light on his collar turned a sharp, flashing red. The ship's main computer began to beep rapidly. Something was wrong. Jasper's calm mood disappeared in an instant. He looked at the gold data chip on the desk and then back at the door. He told the Krell that they were lucky, or perhaps very unlucky. Another ship was approaching. It wasn't a scavenger ship, it was a Krell warship, likely coming to check on Vark's team. Jasper's eyes narrowed. He told the 3 scavengers that he was going to release the gravity. He was going to give them a choice. They could stay and help him protect the ship from their own people, or they could become the first trash he threw out of the airlock. The gravity suddenly vanished, and the Krell scrambled to their feet, reaching for their weapons. But as they looked at the tiny orange cat, they realized they weren't looking at a pet anymore. They were looking at a commander. Jasper sat back down, his tail twitching with excitement. The real hunt was no longer just inside the ship, it was about to move to the stars. The Krell warship was coming, but they had no idea that a 10-pound house cat was waiting for them with a billion-ton weapon. The heavy silence of the command center was now filled with a new, terrifying sound. It was the deep, rhythmic thumping of a Krell warship's long-range scanners hitting the hull of the SS Solstice. Vark, Zog, and Rex stood shaking, their weapons held loosely in their hands. They knew that ship. It was the Bone Crusher, a vessel famous for destroying everything in its path. Vark looked at the tiny orange cat on the desk and then at the radar screen. He knew that if his own people found him here, they would not rescue him. They would kill him for failing to secure the ship quickly. He was trapped between a demon cat and a merciless war fleet. Jasper didn't seem bothered by the giant warship. He sat calmly, but the blue light on his collar began to glow brighter, casting long, strange shadows against the walls. Suddenly, the air in the room shimmered. A blue, translucent light began to form in the center of the room. The Krell jumped back in fear as a holographic image appeared. It was a tall human male in a neat blue uniform. He had kind eyes but a tired face. This was Captain Miller. The image wasn't real, it was a recorded memory being played by the ship's AI through Jasper's mind. The holograph looked down at the empty space where Jasper was sitting and smiled. In the recording, Captain Miller spoke softly. He said that if anyone was seeing this, it meant the humans were gone, and Jasper was the only one left to guard the house. He explained that Jasper wasn't just a pet, he was the last soul of the Solstice. During the Great War, the humans had developed a way to merge animal instincts with machine logic. Cats were chosen because of their perfect balance of curiosity and territorial protection. Miller's voice became serious as he looked into the camera. He said that whoever tried to hurt his cat would be fighting the entire power of a dying star. The recording ended, and the image of the captain faded into dust, leaving only the small cat and the 3 terrified aliens in the room. Jasper's voice returned to the speakers, but it sounded different now, more human, yet more dangerous. He told the Krell that Captain Miller had died in that very chair protecting him from a bioweapon. He told them that for 50 years, he had been waiting in the dark, watching the stars, and keeping the ship's systems alive. He had cleaned the air, recycled the water, and waited for a friend to return. But instead of friends, he got scavengers. He told Vark that the Krell warship outside was already charging its main cannons. They didn't care about Vark's life. They only wanted the human technology, and they were willing to turn the Solstice into scrap metal to get it. The suspense reached a breaking point when a message appeared on the main screen. It was the commander of the Krell warship. He didn't ask for a peaceful surrender. He told Vark that he had 3 minutes to leave the ship or be destroyed with it. Zog and Rek looked at Vark, waiting for an order. They were warriors, but they were paralyzed by fear. They were stuck on a ship controlled by a cat that could change gravity with a flick of its tail. Vark looked at Jasper. The cat's ears were flat against his head, and his tail was lashing back and forth like a whip. Jasper was ready for a fight, and he didn't care if he was outnumbered. "You have 2 choices," Jasper said, his voice vibrating through the floorboards. "You can run to your escape pod and hope the warship doesn't blow you out of the sky for being cowards. Or, you can sit in those chairs, put on those human headsets, and help me fly this ship." Vark was stunned. He asked how a cat could expect lizards to help him. Jasper let out a sharp, short sound that sounded almost like a laugh. He told them that he had the brains and the ship had the muscles, but he needed fingers to pull the manual triggers that the AI couldn't reach. He told them that if they helped him, they might survive. If they didn't, they would die as thieves. The Krell warship fired a warning shot. The entire SS Solstice groaned as the energy beam hit the outer shields. The lights flickered, and a small puff of smoke came from a nearby panel. Jasper didn't flinch. He jumped from the desk onto the captain's chair, sitting exactly where Miller used to sit. He looked at the 3 aliens with a cold, piercing gaze. He told them that time was up. Vark looked at his crew, then slowly dropped his plasma rifle. He realized that the tiny cat was the only thing standing between them and certain death. One by one, the giant lizard aliens sat in the smaller human chairs. They looked ridiculous, their large bodies squeezing into seats meant for humans. They put on the neural headsets, and instantly, their minds were flooded with data from the ship. They could see the stars, the enemy ship, and the glowing spirit of the cat connecting them all. Jasper let out a long, loud meow that echoed through the entire ship. It wasn't a cry for help, it was a war cry. The hunt was no longer happening in the hallways. The hunt was moving into the deep, dark ocean of space. The small house cat was about to lead 3 lizard scavengers into a battle against a galactic empire. The SS Solstice was no longer a silent tomb. It was now a living, breathing weapon. Inside the command center, the 3 Krell scavengers were strapped into human flight chairs that were much too small for them. Their heads were connected to the ship through the neural headsets, and for the first time, they felt what Jasper felt. They could feel the vibrations of the engines in their bones. They could feel the cold touch of space against the outer hull. And at the center of it all was Jasper. The orange cat sat perfectly still in the captain's chair, his eyes closed. He was the conductor of this strange orchestra. He told the Krell to stop shaking and focus. He told them that the Krell warship was big and slow, while the Solstice was small and fast, just like a mouse running away from a clumsy dog. Outside, the massive Krell warship, the Bone Crusher, moved closer. It looked like a giant mountain of jagged metal and glowing green cannons. The commander of the warship, a cruel alien named Krag, didn't believe in ghosts or stories about demon cats. He saw the Solstice as a broken prize. He ordered his crew to fire the tractor beams to pull the human ship in. But as the green beams reached out to grab the Solstice, Jasper acted. He didn't fire back with lasers. Instead, he did something very cat-like. He told the ship to go dark. In an instant, every light on the Solstice turned off. The engines stopped glowing. To the warship sensors, the human ship simply disappeared into the blackness of space. The Krell scavengers inside were terrified. They were sitting in total darkness, unable to see their own hands. Zog began to panic, whispering that they were going to die in the dark. But Jasper's voice came through their headsets, sounding sharp and clear. He told them to be silent. He explained that a hunter does not always win by being the loudest or the strongest. A hunter wins by waiting for the right moment to strike. He was using the station's old cooling vents to push the ship slowly through the shadows. He was moving the entire spaceship the same way a cat stalks a bird in the garden, slow, silent, and invisible. Commander Krag was furious. He ordered his warship to fire blindly into the dark. Giant green explosions lit up the space around the Solstice, but Jasper was already gone. He had moved the ship underneath the warship, hiding in the blind spot where the big guns couldn't reach. The suspense was so thick that the scavengers held their breath, afraid that even a sneeze would give them away. Jasper told Vark to prepare the manual torpedoes. Vark's hands were shaking, but he followed the cat's instructions. He realized that Jasper wasn't just hiding, he was looking for a soft spot to bite. Suddenly, Jasper opened his eyes. They were glowing with a bright, electric purple light. He had found it. The warship had a small thermal exhaust port near its main engine. It was a tiny target, almost impossible to hit. Jasper told the scavengers that they had 1 second to fire everything they had. Through the headsets, he shared his predator vision with them. The aliens saw the warship not as a ship, but as a giant beast with a weak heart. Now! Jasper hissed through the speakers. Vark slammed his fist onto the fire button. 3 human torpedoes shot out from the Solstice, leaving trails of white fire in the dark. The torpedoes didn't hit the thick armor. They flew straight into the exhaust port and exploded inside the warship's engine room. The massive Krell vessel shook violently. Fire erupted from its back, and its green lights began to flicker and die. The Bone Crusher was paralyzed. It wasn't destroyed yet, but it was hurt and confused. Inside the Solstice, the scavengers cheered. They couldn't believe it. They had actually damaged a warship that was 10 times their size. But Jasper didn't cheer. He stayed focused. He knew that a wounded beast is the most dangerous kind. Jasper turned the Solstice around, facing the damaged warship. He told the scavengers that they weren't done yet. He wanted to send a message that the Krell Empire would never forget. He commanded the ship to turn on every single light at once. The Solstice shone like a small star in the middle of the darkness. Jasper opened a communication channel to the warship's bridge. Commander Krag's face appeared on the screen, covered in soot and blood. He was screaming, asking what kind of human magic was being used against him. Jasper walked slowly toward the camera until his small, furry face filled the entire screen. "This isn't magic," Jasper said, his voice cold and steady. "This is a lesson. You came here to steal from the dead. But you forgot that the dead leave guards behind." Jasper showed his teeth in a tiny, sharp grin. He told Krag that he would let them live this time, but they had to go back to their home planet and tell everyone what happened. He told them to tell the galaxy that the SS Solstice was no longer an abandoned ship. It was a territory. And in this territory, a 10-pound cat was the king of the jungle. The warship, smoking and broken, began to retreat into the distance. But as the scavengers relaxed, Jasper's ears suddenly twitched again. He looked at the gold data chip on the desk. Something was wrong. The battle was over, but a much bigger secret was about to be revealed. The SS Solstice was screaming. Red emergency lights pulsed through the smoke-filled hallways like a dying heartbeat. The battle with the Krell warship had been won, but the cost was high. The ship's main power core was leaking energy, and the gravity systems were flickering on and off. Inside the command center, the 3 Krell scavengers unbuckled themselves from their seats. They were no longer the arrogant hunters who had arrived an hour ago. They were covered in soot and shaking with adrenaline. Vark, the leader, looked at the main console. There it was, the golden data chip, still plugged into the system. It was glowing with the light of 1,000 secrets. Vark's yellow eyes narrowed. He looked at Jasper, who was sitting on the floor. The orange cat looked tired. His fur was messy, and he was breathing heavily. To Vark, Jasper finally looked like a normal, tiny animal again. The lizard leader's greed began to overcome his fear. He thought to himself that the demon cat was probably out of power. He believed that without the ship's full energy, Jasper was just a 10-pound bag of fur. Vark slowly reached for his hidden dagger, his scaly fingers twitching. He whispered to Zog and Rek to stay back. He wanted the prize for himself. He wanted to go back to his people as a hero, carrying the head of the cat and the gold chip. Jasper didn't move, but his ears twitched. He knew exactly what Vark was thinking. Humans had a saying that curiosity killed the cat, but Jasper knew that greed killed the lizard. As Vark took a step toward the gold chip, the air in the room turned cold. Jasper didn't use the speakers this time. He spoke directly into Vark's mind through the neural link. The voice was a low, terrifying snarl. "Touch that again," the cat warned, "and your teeth will find a new purpose." Vark froze for a second, but he looked at his own large, muscular arms and then at the small cat. He decided to take the risk. He lunged forward, his giant hand reaching for the chip and his other hand swinging the dagger at Jasper. What happened next was a blur of orange and silver. Jasper did not need the ship's gravity to be a predator. He was a domestic house cat, a creature designed by nature for millions of years to be the perfect killer of small things. To Jasper, a giant lizard was just a very big rat. He moved with a speed that the Krell could not follow. He jumped off the floor, bounced off Vark's chest, and landed on the alien's head. Vark screamed as Jasper's claws, sharp as needles, dug into his thick scales. The cat wasn't just scratching, he was attacking the sensitive spots behind Vark's ears. Vark thrashed around, trying to grab the cat, but Jasper was like a ghost. He was too small and too fast. He dropped to the floor, swiped at Vark's ankles, and disappeared under the console. Zog and Rek tried to help their leader, but the ship's AI, sensing Jasper's anger, began to malfunction on purpose. The floor plates began to vibrate, and the heavy captain's chair began to slide back and forth, blocking the other scavengers. It was a chaotic dance in the dark. Vark was bleeding and shouting, swinging his arms wildly, but he couldn't hit what he couldn't catch. Jasper reappeared on top of the main computer. He stood directly in front of the gold chip, his back arched and his fur standing on end. He looked twice his normal size. His eyes were no longer yellow, they were a haunting, electric purple. He told Vark that he had been gentle before because he needed fingers to fly the ship. But now, the warship was gone, and he didn't need Vark anymore. He told the Krell that he could let the life support fail in this room in 3 seconds. He could turn the air into ice. He could make the very floor they stood on melt. Jasper was no longer just a cat, he was the god of this metal world. The suspense was broken by a loud crack. Vark fell to his knees, defeated and terrified. He realized that even a weakened Jasper was more dangerous than a Krell army. He dropped his dagger and put his hands up, begging for mercy. Jasper watched him for a long moment, his tail twitching slowly. The cat knew that he couldn't kill them all, he still needed someone to fix the engine so they wouldn't all blow up. He told Vark to get up and go to the engine room. He told them that they would work until the ship was stable, or they would be the first Krell to ever be used as ship fuel. The 3 scavengers scrambled out of the room. Jasper sat back down by the gold chip. He was exhausted. The purple glow in his eyes faded, and he let out a small, tired meow. He looked at the empty captain's chair and felt a deep sadness. He had protected the home, but he was still alone. However, his ears suddenly caught a new sound. It wasn't a Krell sound. It was a rhythmic beep coming from the gold chip itself. A hidden timer had started. The chip wasn't just a map, it was a beacon. And it was calling someone from the deepest part of the galaxy. The final part of the journey was about to begin, and Jasper realized that his family might be closer than he thought. The SS Solstice was shaking for a different reason now. It wasn't because of explosions or failing engines. A massive shadow had fallen over the ship, blocking out the light of the nearby stars. Vark and his scavengers stood in the engine room, their hands covered in grease and blue coolant. They looked at the monitors and turned pale. A ship had arrived, but it wasn't the Krell. It was a vessel made of smooth, white metal that seemed to glow from within. It was miles long and shaped like a giant wing. On the side of the ship was a symbol the Krell had only seen in ancient history books, the blue and white marble of Earth. The humans had returned, but they didn't look like the weak, dying race the Krell expected. They looked like gods of the vacuum. Jasper stood on the bridge, his small body silhouetted against the massive white ship outside. The gold chip in the console was spinning rapidly, sending a complex code to the newcomers. This was the homecoming protocol. Jasper's silver collar was glowing so brightly that the entire room was bathed in a soft blue light. He wasn't afraid. For 50 years, he had been a lonely ghost in a metal box, but now, his heartbeat was fast with excitement. Through the neural link, he felt 1,000 voices whispering in his mind. They weren't just AI voices, they were the thoughts of a humanity that had spent centuries evolving in the deep dark. They were calling for their little sentinel. Vark ran onto the bridge, his heavy boots clattering. He screamed at Jasper to hide the ship or fire the weapons. He was terrified that the humans would kill them for being thieves. But Jasper didn't even turn his head. He told Vark to be still. He told the Krell that the humans didn't care about the gold chip or the ship's weapons. They were here for the only thing that cannot be built by a machine, loyalty. Jasper explained that the humans had left these dead ships as a test for the galaxy. They wanted to see who would come to learn and who would come to destroy. The Krell had failed the test, but Jasper had passed it. The airlock of the Solstice hissed open with a sound like a long-awaited breath. 3 figures stepped inside. They were tall, wearing suits of liquid light that shifted like water. One of them stepped forward and knelt down on the cold, dirty floor. He didn't look at the giant lizard aliens or the gold chip. He looked only at the small orange cat. The figure reached out a hand, and Jasper did something he hadn't done in half a century. He walked forward, arched his back, and rubbed his head against the visitor's palm. A soft, happy purr vibrated through the ship's speakers. The war was over. The long watch was finished. The human looked up at Vark and the other scavengers. His voice didn't come from a speaker, it echoed inside their minds like thunder. He told the Krell that they were lucky a cat was guarding this ship. If a human soldier had been here, the Krell planet would already be dust. But cats, he said, are better than humans. They are patient. They are fair. And they never forget a friend. The human told Vark to take his small scavenger ship and leave immediately. He told them to tell every living soul in the galaxy that humanity was not dead. They were simply waiting for their friends to find them, and their enemies to fear them. Vark and his crew didn't wait for a second invitation. They ran to their ship and detached from the Solstice as fast as they could. As they flew away, they looked back at the giant white wing ship. They saw the Solstice being pulled into the massive vessel's hangar like a toy. Vark realized that the galaxy was a much more dangerous place than he thought. He realized that the smallest creature on a human ship was more powerful than a Krell warlord. He decided that from that day on, he would never touch anything that belonged to a human again. The demon cat had changed him forever. Inside the white ship, Jasper was carried into a room that looked like a green forest. There was real grass, real trees, and the smell of fresh water. He was finally home. The human who carried him was a descendant of Captain Miller, and he whispered a "thank you" into Jasper's ear. Jasper found a sunny spot on a soft patch of grass and curled into a ball. He was just a domestic house cat again. He didn't need to control gravity or fire torpedoes anymore. He closed his eyes, feeling the warmth of a real sun on his orange fur. The story of the SS Solstice became a legend among the stars. Every alien race learned the same lesson: humans are powerful, but their bonds are even stronger. If you find an empty human ship, leave it alone. Because somewhere in the shadows, a small pair of yellow eyes is watching. And if you touch their home, you will find out why humans chose the cat as their final guardian. Jasper slept deeply, dreaming of the stars he had guarded, knowing that the teeth of humanity would always be ready for anyone who dared to wake the cat.